And welcome. I'm Emily Brandt. As one of the developmental pediatricians here at Anna Shaw Children's Institute, I get a lot of questions about nutrition and worries that families are having. So we thought we would start what will probably turn out to be a series of questions that we'll have for one of our dietitians here at Hamilton Medical Center. So this is Ashley Broderick, who's joining us today, and she's graciously agreed to answer some questions and start by giving us some overview information about nutrition and kids and how we could approach it. So one of the first questions I often get is, how much should my child be eating? And then along with that, what types of food are important? Do they really need all the food groups? Because let's face it, that's hard with kids sometimes.
Not always easy, for sure. So I thought maybe we could start by looking really at the food basics. So I think a lot of us may remember the days of the food pyramid. And finally, I guess there was a decision made to transfer away from, we took the pyramid, then we turned it on its side, and then finally decided maybe the plate would be a good tool to utilize to actually look at the different components of a meal. So on the screen, you'll see a plate in front of you that has the different food groups, not pictured as dairy. So we usually see dairy in the form of milk or maybe yogurt. But when we're specifically looking at a plate and looking at portions, the plate on the screen really divides it up well. So you'll see protein. So about a quarter of the plate would be protein. Leaner protein is what would be a preferential. Trying to have a moderate amount of fried or higher fat items such as steak or ground beef. Plant-based proteins, beans, lentils would also fall in this category. So in the top, right above protein, you can see the grains. What would also kind of fall in that little quarter of the plate is our starchy vegetables. So our potatoes, our winter squash, so acorn squash, butternut squash, sweet potatoes, that kind of all falls in the same category as grains. So grains being pastas, breads, rice, tortillas. So that's kind of all the same category. Bottom left, or the bottom corner, you can see on your screen probably the carrots and green beans. That's going to be our non-starchy vegetables. So our leafy greens, our summer squash, such as yellow squash, zucchini, peppers, cauliflower, carrots are pictured there. I'm trying to think of some others, onions, cabbage, spinach, lettuce. If you're building a salad, that's going to fall in that. And then of course fruit in the top. And so really half of our plate, when we're building kind of a complete meal or a balanced meal, then half of our plate is filled with non-starchy veggies and of course the smaller amount of fruit included. So that is kind of a picture of what might be a balanced meal.
Yeah, that's really helpful, I think, to be able to see it and think about the whole plate as you're offering a plate to a child.
That's right. And so really just naturally portioning, or how much does one need. So when we're even looking at plate sizes, so the size of a smaller plate or a salad plate, actually even looking at these subdivided plates, at Walmart, the brand Corel has some subdivided plates. And I know with my own kids, that's what we utilize because you're able to really portion out this appropriate amount of sizing and different variations of food. So can definitely be helpful looking at like comparatively to an adult who might be eating on a dinner plate. And really, I'm hoping we're getting away from those charger sized plates, right, that we use for so long. That's going to give oversized portions for sure. But smaller plates for smaller children, and then really kind of thinking through including small amounts of food on each plate will get you to where you need to be as far as meeting needs.
Nice. Well, that's a fun looking picture.
Yeah, so kind of addressing the question, do we really need a variety of foods from, do we have to eat from all the food groups? Some kids, depending on um, their pickiness or depending on maybe their sensory preference, you may really struggle in these areas. So I will say my firstborn child, he will eat anything. So I was actually, really good at this, getting kids to eat what they needed to eat. Now my third child has proved me every challenge that I have really feel like I kind of have a headache by the time breakfast is over. Trying to get her to eat breakfast, trying to get her variety in. But, just like this picture really shows a rainbow, what's really neat about our different food sources is even based on color, we can tell that there's different vitamins, minerals, nutrients, phytonutrients that are really present based on color alone. And so eating a rainbow, or at least attempting to incorporate different colors in the day, really can cover a variety of our needs as far as nutrition goes, just by focusing on colors. So especially with kids, even getting them involved, color can be maybe a good draw for them to choose food. So looking at within the grocery at a variety of green colored foods or orange colored foods, and really working through building meals with those.
Yeah, I can see that being fun to do.
Yeah. So, and of course, needs. So, and that gets a little bit tricky because I do think that it can be incredibly overwhelming to think through what is my child eating enough, and are we portioning enough, and really and then if you happen to have multiple children, trying to do that for each child, and you may have a variety of age groups, and it really can be a lot of work. And I really believe that that's where the plate can just be a great tool. So if you are offering a variety of options from the different food groups, and you see that your child's eating mostly through their meals, and that we really have expectations of, kids are going to eat better, especially younger kids, through the early part of the day. And as the day goes on, they may find themselves busier or fatigued, or I'd much rather be running outside than I would be eating your fruit bowl that you fixed. So really kind of having the expectation that we may not finish our meals, and that's completely okay, but offering the variety, and really setting kids up to be able to have the variety. As you see on the bottom of this screen, so the screen that you're seeing right now is actually just kind of a escape of 4 to 8-year-olds. With the calorie amount that's suggested. Calories are just a measurement of energy, so that's our intake of food. And if this is over a period of a day, so I'll take, for example, the whole fruit. So if a cup of fruit in a day for a child, so if we were to spread that over realistically 3 meals, or add in a couple of snacks, it's very reasonable to think that you may could get that in for a child.
Yeah.
So an activity, of course, is incredibly, albeit not food, it is very important for a child's overall well-being, and really can balance out the food. So it is not, this is very picturesque, I do know that, and in an ideal world, we would have children that are willing to eat from all different food groups. What I have found, even offering children when you're trying to expand variety, setting them up for success. So let's say that you're building a dinner, and you know that your child loves mac and cheese. That seems to be a crowd favorite, right? So maybe we give our child a portion of mac and cheese, but we're introducing green beans, and we'd like for them to try the green beans. So we're going to put both of those on the plate. They're going to eat through the mac and cheese. So maybe with the green beans, so let's say that they start asking for more mac and cheese. And so hey, how about before we get mac and cheese, I'd love for you to try the green beans. How many green beans would you be willing to try? They might say one, they might say, hopefully they won't say 20, like just to come up with a cool number. But just so they're at least willing to try a small piece of a new food that's on their plate. So introducing a new food along with a food that's going to be successful for them is a good way to introduce new foods, helping allowing the child to help in preparation. So if you're doing carrots for a meal or cucumbers, allow for a child to safely prepare that. So maybe peeling the cucumbers or peeling the carrot and then cutting it up to put on their plate. And a lot of times that in and of itself, if the child has a little bit of ownership in it, then they're willing to taste it.
Yeah. And right, it's nice just to have these kind of overview ideas. Right, in this age range, it's about this many calories. And then you'll keep working with your pediatrician, and every time you go in for a well check, they'll watch to see how your child is doing compared to the growth chart. And so you can adjust that up or down depending on how they're doing.
That's right. Very good.
All right. Well, you talked about some of these different food groups, and I know one question that families have for me sometimes is, how can I get my child to eat good proteins? A lot of them love chicken nuggets or hot dogs, and, can they just get all of their protein through that? Would that be okay? What's a great way to work on that?
It's a great question. So, typically sweet and salty foods are foods that kids are going to bend towards because they have intense flavors. Usually we see them at fun events, and so those are always going to be things that our kids want. Heavy carbohydrates, so crackers and whatnot, tend to be easy snacks, and so definitely a lot more focus on protein. I think even just culturally recently within the diet world of different focuses on adding protein, both animal sources and plant-based sources. We really do have a variety of sources. So protein is incredibly important to our diet. It is serves as the building blocks for our muscles, our bones, our bloods. We see that with iron and cartilage, with really the peptides that kind of bind and give that cushioning. Building blocks for our vitamins, for our hormone production, enzyme production, and varying the protein choices is going to be what really can allow our body to function. So proteins also provide calories, so energy. So we have our proteins, we have fat, and we have carbohydrates. So carbohydrate, our body takes 100% of a carbohydrate and turns it into energy. With protein, we're not as effective in breaking it down and turning it into straight calories or straight glucose or energy for our blood, but it contains incredibly important pieces that that actually really impact our bodily function and our organs and our health. So
Nice.
So here's what's interesting about protein. So as you can see on the screen, again, I'm giving you a 4 to 8-year-old, so same that we looked at just with the overall calorie needs. And so the reality with the typical child is that they are double, if not triple, for their intake of protein. So a lot of kids, because our portions tend to be big, so if we look at this like an ounce of cheese, so an ounce of cheese, if your child loves cheese, that's actually not much cheese at all. So and with a half cup of brown rice, that's really a smaller portion as well. So that said, if you feel a lot of stress or anxiety over your child getting protein, likely they are doing a pretty good job of covering the bases of getting protein. Now, that said, like Dr. Brandt mentioned, a lot of children kind of get focused on the food source of protein. So, for example, chicken nuggets or hot dogs. And so these do contain protein, but they also contain a high amount of sodium or a high amount of fat, and also ultra processed. And so while they are okay to have in our diet, at times there may be better alternatives to try to transition to different proteins. So, and again, easier said than done sometimes, but trying to be creative, probably in the same way that you might introduce a new vegetable, introducing different protein sources. So, if you find that your child is drawn to very crunchy, crispy, food items, so like chicken nuggets, for example, then maybe trying to add some almonds or add some, oh, what are they called? Garbanzo beans that are, they sell these where they're kind of overcooked and they're in the nut section, but it's garbanzo beans that are just very, very crunchy, really crispy. Of protein. So really kind of looking at different one of these meals, and maybe we try to look at different sources of hot dogs. So maybe we look at hot dogs that are turkey dogs that may be lower in fat content, or we look at lower sodium hot dogs. Brand differences also can really impact the amount of sodium or whatnot that might be in there.
Okay, yeah, that's neat. It's good to see some of those other sources, and even like you said there from the screen,
Mhm.
whole grain cereal, nice and crunchy,
That's right.
and you can get some protein from that as well. I love
Yes.
that.
That is very good.
All right. So another question I often get is, what if my child really only likes junk food like chips and sweets? How can I get some of these other nutrients in for them?
Yeah, and I think, you know, the thing I think as a parent, then there is I would encourage you, if you're a parent, if you're a caregiver, if you're a role, even as if you're in a childcare facility and making choices about foods, there is um, there is a little bit of a reality that we actually have the ability to make to make choices for the child and to try to provide different alternatives, whether it be healthy alternatives that we're able to self-prepare, or even healthier options that may be prepared for us that we find at the grocery or in a food store. Um, I um, would say that my 5-year-old can't drive themselves to McDonald's 4 times a day. So there is a little bit of my responsibility to say, okay, maybe we can try to figure out other options. Now, I also recognize in saying that if you have a child that is very focused on one food item and that is what they want, and you want to feed your child, because that's what we've talked about this, we want to do as a parent, like we feel we want to provide for you, and this is what you're going to eat, and so I will get you this particular meal every day. But really, this is where I would encourage you to work with your pediatrician, with a dietitian, to really think through creative ways to help the child to maybe introduce a variety of food in their diet. So, um, so I love this language. So the little graphic that's on the screen right now, um, we we use this just within my own house of really trying not to say that there are no bad foods, right? So I believe that there are foods that we maybe should eat more often than other, fresh fruits and vegetables, and then there's foods that we eat on special occasions. So birthday cake, when it is a birthday, we eat birthday cake. We don't need to have birthday cake every single day of the year and multiple times in a day. It's really good, don't get me wrong, but I would like to have birthday cake, but it doesn't mean it's very nutritious for me. So I love the language of go foods and woe foods. So we think of go foods that are going to energize us. So these are our basic foods that we mentioned in the beginning of this presentation. Slow foods are going to be things that kind of this medium category that they're definitely maybe more whole foods. So this may be where fruit juice falls in, or we may see like a more dense sandwich. But foods that may are kind of tending towards a higher calorie content and probably not in their original source. Low foods are going to be foods like I mentioned before. So, birthday cakes, our cupcakes, our cookies, and things like that. And again, I feel, we have just a wealth of resource to these foods. So you can't go to the grocery without walking through the bakery section, and you can't go down aisles where you're not bombarded with all kinds of choices. So, and if you've been in the grocery with a child, that's a whole different level of maybe start there. Maybe don't take your child to the grocery or don't go through the middle aisles. But that's a whole other level of negotiating over the salty and processed and sweet snacks. And so that would be where I really would start to maybe put some framework around low foods. So these are foods that we really shouldn't, or we really need to consider that these are not foods that are typically going to be very nutrient dense. So nutrient dense meaning have a variety of vitamins and minerals and nutrients for our basic build in our cells. But even though they taste good, they may not be the best for those things. So definitely a consideration to kind of look at like what are our go foods, our foods that are going to give us energy, and then kind of just tapering down on our slow or low foods. So things we can have, but we don't have them often. Trying to build treats in that they actually truly are a treat. At our house, we do Treat Tuesday. And so my kids know I'm going to pick them up. We're going to get an ice cream, but we're not going to go home that day and eat another ice cream. And we're not going to go on to treat Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We're going to go on Treat Tuesday. So they know what to expect. We're able to kind of build that into our routine. And we treat it as it is a treat. It's just something that we enjoy. We build a little bit of culture around that.
Nice.
Does that help?
That sounds like a fun idea. All right, so I also hear from families if a child has a really picky diet, they're worried about vitamins and nutrients like iron. So how can we try and get some more of those in?
So this absolutely is everything looks so great on paper, but the reality when the rubber meets the road and we aren't seeing that variety introduced in the diet. So colorful diet is going to give us a variety of vitamins and nutrients. However, when we struggle with that, we definitely can look at supplements that could how they would fit in. So I would absolutely bring this as a conversation with your physician, with pediatrician, or working directly with a dietitian just to kind of holistically understand kind of the overall calorie intake and where there's challenges. And but naturally knowing, I feel like in some cases that iron fortified cereal really gets a bad rap, but the reality of it is that it is a crunchy snack option and it contains a lot of iron and vitamins. And so when you look at like total cereal actually has 100% of daily iron needs for an adult.
Wow.
So not even having to depend on a supplement, you could incorporate that into like a mix. So if your child loves goldfish, putting some Cheerios or the total cereal and mixing in some dried fruits and kind of making like a snack mix may be the equivalent of adding in a supplement of a vitamin.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
So,
All right. So another time I hear from families is that time right after school where I think kids have just sort of run out of energy and they have a little bit of that hangry time. Have any suggestions for that? We know dinner's coming up, fairly soon after that, but how can we get through that?
yeah, so that's a real thing. I mean, I feel that for myself as an adult, but yeah, you pick them up, they're grumpy, they probably expended energy all day. But I think, a couple of things I remember early on just being kind of told with a child, especially with a baby, of looking at three things. Are they hungry? Are they tired? Are they overstimulated? And I think that never change. I really believe, even to adulthood, that does not change. I believe that is a real thing. And you look at a child when they get finished with school, they are probably all of those things. They probably had lunch at, I don't know, at 10:30, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, maybe not a snack. So this is a good, really just a good space of either trying to keep some pretty quick snacks in your car, and I think having snacks that are easy to grab, and in small portions. So maybe some peanut butter crackers. You've got a protein and you've got a carbohydrate. So that's going to stay with the child until you can get home and maybe get an early dinner. If you have the time and capability to be at home and have something fresh, apple slices combined with a protein, so maybe a string cheese or a handful of nuts could also be a good option. I like the little apple sauces, so no sugar added. So it is just straight applesauce or maybe another fruit source. I know they have apple strawberry. But again, something you could easily have in the car, and look for a protein to pair it with. So I keep saying nut butter. So if your child has a nut allergy, alternatives could be like a sun butter, could be a cheese stick if you're able to get home, or just something that's a nutrient dense with a lot of protein, specific snacks. So there's several brands of crackers or granola bars that are more bent on having more protein in it, and so they kind of balance out the protein and carbohydrate. So I can name a few examples of it, but basically what I would kind of look for if you were looking, say, like at a granola bar, which is a shelf-stable thing that you really could just keep in a tub in the car, I would look on a nutrition label to see that that specific bar has at least 5 grams of protein in that bar. So that's going to be a good source. So even with a smaller little person, if you half that bar, then that's a good source of protein. So, but that kind of tells you there's a lot more probably nutrition value than like maybe one that only has 1 gram of protein in it, where it's going to be mostly carbohydrate, probably closer to like a candy bar than it is a nutrition value.
Nice. That's an easy way to look at it, and right, to have something quick that you can get to in the moment and might really turn that car ride around.
That's right. Yes.
All right. Another question I get is just talking about drinks. How about drinking juice or sports drinks? Can kids get good vitamins from those? And along that line, what should they be drinking? How much? I also hear a lot of, well, we can just get diet soda then. Is that healthier? How do you address some of those questions?
These are all good questions. And so a couple of thoughts. So I actually found the graphic that you see, and I actually really liked it, aside from pop. I don't know if everyone used the word pop right now, but so I think a couple of things with drinks that we I think drink all the drinks that were listed here. So juice, sports drinks, sodas, they really do all have a place. So, but everyday use may not be what they're intended for or needed for. So when we look at sports drinks, so we're kind of transitioning seasons right now, at least here in our state. Maybe about a couple of months ago, we had days that we were well over 100, 110 degrees, right? So that was an exaggeration. I don't think it was ever 110 degrees, but we'll go. It felt that way. In my mind, it felt that way. But so really you couldn't walk to your car without just being drenched in sweat. And so when we sweat, we lose sodium, we lose potassium, and we really do lose our electrolytes. And so that is where a sports drink or an electrolyte replacement can have a place. Very active children, so children that are playing soccer or playing football or running and jumping and playing, that's another place that we really can utilize a sports drink or an electrolyte replacement. I think trying to look at ones that may have a lower sugar content in them or less added sugar. That's another little word you can look at on a nutrition label. I try, if at all possible, to steer away if there is included added sugar, and there's a large amount, or if it makes up the majority of the carbohydrate, because it just shows that that's got a lot of not naturally found sugar. So, water, always the best choice. So our bodies are made up of majority of water, so we really need it to function. Again, on a cellular level, water helps with just every part of our working body. So water is always a great idea. Milk and juice, these are things, with milk, I think kids are different. So some kids you may be able to offer milk just with one meal and they're fine with it. Some kids may be wanting to drink a gallon in a day, so that can be a lot of calories. And the honest truth is, if we're drinking too much milk, that impacts our iron. And so overconsumption of milk can actually negatively impact our body's iron levels. So kind of keeping a balance with that. And the same with juice. Juice is a great source of vitamins and a great source can be counted as a serving of fruit in a day. But it's also like, let's look at an orange. If you were to eat an orange, the amount of time it takes you to peel the orange and eat the orange, number one, there's that. Number two, the fiber that's included with an actual piece of fruit or the orange, you lose that fiber content. And also, when you're eating the orange, your body has to do a lot of work to digest that orange. So that's not true with juice. So juice really it's very accessible nutrition. So that juice goes in your system, gets right in your blood system, and it can shoot it up and shoot it down if it's not part of a balanced meal. So juice can be a great thing. Probably just don't want a lot of juice, and with a child, a portion of juice is actually very small. So probably a 4-ounce serving, half a cup or a little bit less even is going to be. If your child is a big juice drinker, I would really encourage you to consider watering that juice down. Orange juice, incredibly hard to water down, but grape juice is absolutely not. That would be an easy one that you could definitely add a little bit of grape juice, add a lot of water, and get the taste, but not the calories with it. Cokes, soft drinks, sodas, that's really, to go back to our other language, those are going to be woe foods. So these are things that we really don't need every day. Just like in the adult world, they're really not things that we should be dependent on. I would say, diet, yes, doesn't have the calories and the sugar in it. But it does bring a whole other slew of ingredients that we may not want present with our children when we're trying. So you may have more to say to that than I do.
No, I think that's a great summary of how to think about it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we put a couple of different resources up there that you can look at. Healthychildren.org is a website from the American Academy of Pediatrics, and I put a little snippet of one of the pages there. You can see by the different age groups, they have nutrition recommendations, how much you should have, and ideas for, well, they have articles with ideas for snacks and different things like that. So that's a great website to look at. And the dietaryguidelines.gov is another great website if you're looking for in-depth information. So that gives you some resources and a nice little overview of some of the initial questions that families ask. And then we'll be thinking about doing some additional questions, kind of some more in-depth questions that I get from families about specifics in a future talk. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.